So welcome back, everybody, to the second part of this Craft Skills for Garden Conservation webinar. Some people might be joining for now in order to hear the wonderful contribution we're going to have about Swedish orangeries, and in particular, the amazing reconstruction from scratch of the orangery at Gunnebo, which is just north of Gothenburg in Sweden. So I think, first of all, we're going to hear from Stefan Günther, who is the property director and specialist conservation architect at Gunnebo House and Gardens, and presumably was responsible for the whole project of reconstructing the orangery, which I've seen at various stages when I visited the property, and I'm so impressed that it's all finished and functional, and we used it for the workshop on topiary in the summer. We'll also be hearing, I should say, from Joakim, who many of you will know well as the head gardener at Gunnebo. So he'll be joining in the presentation as well.
Yes, I will say something about the reconstruction of the orangery, and especially talking about materials and methods and craft skills before Joakim follows. And this is an area view of Gunnebo, and you can see the orangery down here for those who haven't visited Gunnebo. And this is, as Kate just said, is a complete new building built after old drawings. And this is part of a greater project that started already 30 years ago called the Gunnebo House back to the 18th century. And this has been performed in 3 phases, and the vision has been to restore the property, to save it for the future, and to develop it as a tourist destination with a living history to show for people. And I will show the 3 phases. The first one was to reconstruct the gardens, especially the old kitchen garden, but also the what is it called in your language? French garden. I think it called something else. But the actual garden around the house was also reconstructed with balustrades and railings. And there was also a servants' quarters house, which you see in this picture, which was turned into a restaurant, and also a greenhouse, forcing house. The second phase was to reconstruct the wings and also the new kitchen garden. And the third phase has been to reconstruct the orangery, which was almost completed last year. It says 18 here, but this has been prolonged all the time. And I would like to say some words on the process. This is the kind of material we had to that was preserved at Gunnebo to work with or from. But to be able to start the process, we had to make excavations where the orangery has been built before, and we have kind of measured, valued monument or manuscripts or documents to each other. So the most important has been the archaeological findings. After that is the documents, which is drawings and pictures. We also have written descriptions, and when we didn't find anything in the actual orangery, we tried to compare it with Gunnebo House, and then with other buildings in Sweden and buildings, and especially orangeries in other countries. But we have also studied 18th century literature and theory, and we have, of course, to be updated with recent research in this area. And these are the 200. We have a very good material from the original architect, and these are 200 preserved original drawings, and 15 of these it describes the whole property. And somewhere here, I think the orange, there are the wings, and there are the 15 pictures of or drawings of the orange. I can't find them, but you will see more of them soon. We also have 9 or 10 watercolors on this type that shows the house itself, but also the orange. You can see it here in the middle and to the side here, and also this nice watercolor of the actual facade. The archaeological surveys were made in 4 phases during 4 summers by teachers and students at Gothenburg University. And there was also, you can see the plans here from the 3rd phase. There was also a master thesis in archaeology written about this by one of the students who took part in the excavations service. We also made study tours planned by Joakim, among others. This is one example from Sergenstadt in Germany, from the exterior, the reconstructed exterior and interior, just to show the kind of building that we are talking about here. We also had about 5 international seminars or seminars with the researchers and specialists from all over Europe. And the most important one was a 2-day seminar with, among others, Thomas Baumgartner, Ed Distelkamp, Helmut Eberhard Paulus, which is maybe known by you. And we were discussing in 3 workshops the choice of building materials in the Orangery, the choice of heating system, and choice of ventilation aeration in the house. And we decided to follow the old drawings after 2 days. So from this material, facades, plans, they were never complete. It had to be reconstructed. And watercolors, it was possible to make this kind of building drawings, facades and sections, and it's about 300 new drawings for the building. And we built a stone foundation and timber frame construction. The foundation took only a couple of months. The timber frame construction took a couple of years, actually. And from these kind of sections, we constructed the actual forcing house or greenhouse in the middle. We used for the joist or beams in the floors, we used cleaved timber, which was covered with clay and handmade bricks. And this is how the cleaved timber is covered with clay. And after preparation, it's the same room. We started to lay the brick floors. These handmade bricks from Denmark. We also, the heating system is ceramic stoves, which you can see here are in plan, and here's one elevate or cross section of one here. And we used this to compare with the ceramic stoves in the house. So we took measures from this. It's actually very similar, but instead of this elaborated pattern, we used something typical for Swedish simple houses. Is this green color instead. And here is actually the greenhouse, which I showed you earlier, with a cross section, how it looks when it was finished before we put the plants inside the orangery. For this room, you can see the glass facade here. We found several buckets of green glass in different colors. And we could also find cames or mullions of lead. So we have copied the different colors, and we knew that it was this is Seehof in Germany. But then we had these drawings of our windows, and then we can see here that it should be lead pane glass put in this frame. And after it was mounted in the house, it looked like this. This is the glass comes from Germany, from Bavaria. Glashütte Lamberts, if someone is looking for green glass. This, apart from being an orangery and a forcing house, this building also contains a garden grotto, which also has been reconstructed from scratch, so to say. And it was built with bricks like this, with a cupola. inside, and many people wanted us to keep it this way, but we followed these drawings, and we have not been able to. We haven't built. We have no furniture or statues yet, but the room looks like this now. And many different artisans have been taking part in this to be able to build this complicated room with a lot of stucco decorations. There's 50 different elements of stucco, which is then plastered with lime plaster and painted with lime color. But there is no plants in this room. Except for the clay in the floors, this was used to create a good hygroscopic climate. We also have clay in the joist in the ceiling, above the ceiling. And this is sun-dried clay with straw made after the size of the same, what we also can find in the joist in the house, Gunnebo House. And this is put above the ceiling. It looks like this. And there is one more place where we try to get in this wooden building. We have also clay in the ceilings. It's plastered with clay and sand, which you can see here. And this is also shows the stucco decoration, but you can see the clay in the ceiling. And here is before it's painted, and here is how it looks. Okay, there's you can see the grotto here, a portico, and then there is this vestibule to the right. And after we painted this room with the orange, what is it called? Well, the plants inside, it looks like this. And this is where Joakim will continue to speak.
Yes, thank you, Stefan. Do you hear me? Yeah, it works. So I will share some experience from the first year with orangery plants in the orangery at Gunnebo, and maybe we could also say that I will share some of the mistakes that we've made and some of the hardships with the plants. So yeah. You can show next slide, please. The plant collection in the orangery at Gunnebo is that we have today is based on a plant list from the orangery at Gunnebo in 1810, and this plant list is dominated by citrus trees. So we have started to collect plants again and started with citrus, focusing on citrus trees, mainly sour oranges and also lemons. Next image, please. And this plant list consists of 86 posts, a lot of different species, and about 440 plants. So they must have been quite small, and they were presumably kept in different glass houses and orangeries and hotbeds around at the estate, not only in the orangery, but mainly in the orangery, the plants. And here we also see yeah, we saw a short glimpse of original drawing of a planter from the architect that we have used as a model to reconstruct the planters that you see here. Yeah, there you see the original design from the architect for the planter. So next slide, please. Many plants were bought already 2016 for the garden exhibition Gothenburg Green World that we had here in Gothenburg and at Gunnebo. And since then they have been in the garden during summer and in different temporary buildings in the winters. The plants have suffered from bad conditions during the winters, with lots of pests and diseases. So now I'm sharing the mistakes that we've made with you. Generally, one crucial matter is the balance between the amount of light and the temperature, as most of you know already. But so now I will present the process with the plants during a year, largely based on the practical experiments by gardener Daniel Lundberg, who you can see in the left image here. In early to mid-September, the plants are moved from the parterre in the garden to the Orangery portico, where they get protection from rain. So they have a roof over their head. It is important that the plants are not too wet when moved indoors, since the temperature in the orangery is low and the soil does not dry out. Another effect of the placement in the portico is that the plants get used to less light. The plants are also carefully examined and treated for pests and diseases before they are moved indoors. And we only use organically approved methods for this. A large part of the work with the orangery plants is the moving of them, inside in the autumn before frost and outside in the late spring after the risk for frost. So the plants are moved into the orangery and placed in a specific order, since there is only light from one side in the house. The small plants close to the windows and the larger ones behind them, so that all plants get some light. The goal the first winter in the orangery was to not water the plants too much and to create or keep a high level of air humidity. Many of the plants were in a bad condition with root rot and from getting too much water earlier. To create good conditions, we spray the leaves often during winter if the air humidity is lower than 80%, and water the root ball rarely. So we water them in the crown instead of the roots, at least partly. We also must keep the air humidity levels on a level suitable for the building itself, since it's a wooden building. So we have to think of the health of the building as well. To monitor the moisture in the root ball, Daniel Lundberg have developed a method to use a wooden flower stick that is put into the planter for 10 minutes or so to see if the specific plant needs watering or not. The plants have also been replanted in a soil with good drainage, which is really important in our climate where we have a lot of rain. Next image, please. The orangery have worked fine the first winter. It has been possible to keep a low and even temperature, 5 to 10 degrees, without any heating most of the time. Electric heating elements have only been used occasionally. If it's not too cold outside, we open the large doors on both sides of the building to create cross breeze as well. We have had little problems with pests and diseases, and the plants were at rest in the orangery just as intended, owing to the low temperature in the building. The plants did not start to grow too early, not until the end of March, and the roots are better now and have recovered. We also have fertilized them with the micronutrition sprayed onto the leaves. The plants were in good shape when they were moved out, but then we had an extreme hot and dry early summer, and many orangery plants suffered and lost both leaves and even branches. Next image, please. After the tough start in the early summer with extreme weather, all plants have recovered pretty well during the summer. And the lesson from this is to avoid drastic changes. So we are learning by doing here. The traditional advice is to move the plants in or out when you have 10 days of cloudy weather. We cover the plants with cloth, like in this image, for about a week to protect them from sunlight when we move them out. as you can see here. And in the summer, we only water if there is no rain, and we fertilize every week. So and we try to monitor this situation with too much moisture, too wet root balls. That's really a problem with all the rain that we get here, often in the summers. So next image, please. The citrus plants need regular and careful maintenance, at least in the Nordic countries. So we really have to monitor them and spend some time with the plant collection. But they are an important ornamental. They are important ornamental elements in the historic garden, like Gunnebo House. So we are building up the knowledge here for learning how to keep the plant collection, to get healthy plants, and also in this wooden orangery building, which is new to us. So next image, please. And here, this is the final image that shows the orangery in the garden, and how this is not only a building for practicalities. It's an artwork, and it's really one of the great ornaments in the garden, in the estate. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. There's lots of applause going on, and hearts and confetti and all sorts, because it is a fantastic achievement. So please put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll hopefully get some expert advice. Although, as Joakim was saying, you are actually fairly not new to the topic, but compared to Stefan, for example, who is here still on the panel, you're still learning through experience, trial and error, as we call it in English, as to how the best way to treat those oranges are. So what I was wondering was, you have that fantastic tiled stove within the orangery. At what stage do you actually light that? And is it there just for frost protection, or are you trying to get the oranges to get back into growth there?
So far, we haven't used them because they were constructed quite recently, so they had to dry out, and so we. The first winter in the orangery with the plants, we only used the electrical heating. But since we are satisfied with a temperature of 5 degrees, we don't have to do a lot of heating. The temperature rarely is lower than 5 degrees in the winter here. And what we want to achieve is we want the plants to rest in the winter. So this is a resting place. It's not like the greenhouse or the forcing house where we want them to grow as much as possible. We want them to rest here during the whole winter and keep a low temperature. Since we don't have additional light or anything, so we try to avoid experience with the historical technology, so not improving the conditions for the plants, but trying to use the historical way. So we don't get that much light, so we have to have a really low temperature, and we don't want the plants to grow. And I think we will try the tile stoves, and I think based on experience from other houses, perhaps it's okay. It's enough to light them 2 or 3 times during a 24-hour period to get enough. But it's for frost protection.
I see. Okay, so we've got a question here, a very pertinent one from Geraldine Donovan, saying, how is the building used during the summer when the plants are out? Are benches or seats brought in for visitors, and are you successfully resisting temptations for a summer cafe to appear? I don't know who wants to answer that, Joakim or Stefan, both of you probably.
Yeah, well, I think the original idea with orangeries, they were as we have heard earlier today as well, they were always used for different purposes, not only for the plants. But it's sad when the plants disappear from the orangeries completely. And we want this building to be used in different ways during the year. But in the winter, it's the plant collection. And as you can see, it's an L-shaped building. So half of the building is for decoration and for the people, and half of the building is facing south. And it's mainly for the plants. So this summer we had an exhibition in the Orangery telling about the construction, the reconstruction process. And perhaps I think we will have other exhibitions, maybe statues, art exhibitions or so later on. Maybe not a restaurant or a cafe over there. So, but I think the most important thing is that the plant collection does not disappear entirely, because then we don't show the idea behind the Orangery.
Stefan, do you have any comments on that score? Because I have to say I was so impressed by the finish of the building. It is exquisitely looked after and constructed. I can't imagine if I had been in control of that building on my property, the curator wouldn't have let me go near it with a watering can, for example. In fact, I know that was the case in our very much less ornate orangery. I couldn't water the plants inside. So tell me what your view as the architect is about its use.
We already built the first building that was reconstructed for the servants, as is used as a, I don't know if you still can see if I point here, up here in the picture in the top, there is a restaurant and a cafe, and they think it's too much work to have a cafe down here. Otherwise they might have wanted it, but so there will not be a cafe. They are discussing to have maybe some what is it called, marriages or parties, but
a shop?
No, wedding parties.
But wedding parties. Okay.
Yeah, but it's actually too small.
That's lucky.
We are lucky. But we hope for applying for scholarships and funds to make a sculpture gallery in the summers, but we are not there yet.
And of course, we already used it for our workshop in the summer when we were pruning the box plants and in fact, some of the other orangery plants we were allowed to prune, which was a great privilege. So we've got some other questions on the practical side of things. So somebody wanted to know what sort of foliar feed do you use on the oranges, or what other sort of fertilizers?
Yeah, that's regarding the foliage feed. I don't have the answer. Perhaps Daniel, my colleague, could write that brand, the name of that product in the chat. And regarding the fertilizer that we use in the summer, it's a product named Fontana. It's a Swedish product, which is suitable in certified organic gardens like Gunnebo.
And do you use biological control, or you said you didn't have much in the way of pests yet?
We have had all problems earlier, but so far so good in the new Orangery. It's the conditions are much better. So now you get the answer from Daniel, my colleague, the gardener who knows the details. You saw that the micronutrients and
yeah, so it's seaweed, basically, the kelp, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is good for everything, it seems. I use a lot of seaweed food all over the garden. And Stefan, you're still with us. Would you mind just joining in a little bit on the feeding? We talked about it earlier in Belgium. So you use biological control, or do you use chemical control and chemical feeds?
Well, the biggest problem with pests are mealbugs, and for the moment, well, we will be forced to use biological controlled insect next year. Till now, we were able to pick them away. Each time I picked them, it took me hours just with some alcohol, and I cleaned the leaves. But now we've seen two plants where they become rather dominant, and then they grow over our head, and that's with the warming of the climate. So we will introduce a sort of how do you call it, with the beetles with the black stip, the reds. It was marigold. Ladybirds, they're special ladybirds apparently, and we use biological oil, rape oil with some sulfur. We can use it because biological control or biological certified, it depends a little bit from country to country. For example, in Holland, they can't use the biological rape oil. We can use it even with some sulfur added, and it kills all, even from mealbugs, the eggs they put on the leaves. So it's a very good, it will reduce the pests during this winter, because we as well in winter, we have to keep the plants as cold as possible, as with a leak of light between 5 and 10 degrees. And yeah, we control our plants biological. We introduced since this year biological funguses from Lalstop, Lal. It's a French firm, L'Allemand, and they work with fungal rhizome, which reinforce, sort of something like a mycorrhiza, which reinforce the roots of some plants, and it protects them a little bit more against root rot and Phytophthora. Because Phytophthora is invested, especially Phytophthora syringata, is mutating and is becoming an infesting pest. But I used it in Mattenburg because they had big problems, and it seems to work. And I use it as well in Freir. But I can confirm the coming years if it's really working. But water control, watering stays. It don't mean if you use a biological help or like this Lalstop, like this biological fungi, that you can water whatever you like. Your plants stay sensible to overwatering in cold spells and cold periods. That will forever be the biggest problem, is keeping them through winter and too much water. I think that was the cause that old collections were killed during winter time and caused root rot, and it can come through for several years.
So, in fact, one of the questions from Amy Watson that's just come through is about fungal problems. And you've sort of answered that with Phytophthora and root rot. Joakim, have you discovered any fungal problems yet, or is it too early to see that?
No, we have that as well, and it's connected, as Stefan said, with overwatering them, and earlier we had the problem with not before we here you at this image you can see the portico, so we put all the plants in there when in late summer or early autumn to protect them from rain, so they can really dry before we move them inside. So it's really important to try to control the situation with too much overwatering or too much rain in the soil. And I think that's the key to get healthy plants and also prevent them from fungal disease. But we have fungal disease on some of the plants already. So yeah,
I think Phytophthora is all. Once you use a biological organic substrate, there will always be Phytophthora spores in your compost. It's part of life. And even if but when they can attack the plant, and when they have an open wound which is too big and the plant becomes too weak, they can really infest your plants. And when they infest, the most important thing is really washing the roots off, pruning them back, and then using a mulch leaf, extremely well draining compost. Cover them a little bit with what you do, a gaze, frost gaze, that they keep a certain humidity, and then they can restart growing. And then it's pruning them back, and then hoping they will start making new roots, and then starting from losing a few years to gain the plant, to win up, to survive the plant. I lost some, and in this process of losing, I was able to survive some as well. So it's a process of constant learning. With your climate and your conditions, there are no general rules. I think that's, for me, the most important thing. You come somewhere and try to feel what the conditions, and to hear, especially from the gardeners, what are the local conditions, and don't impose you have apprenticeships, but your apprenticeships on your locations are not the ultimate conditions to solve problems somewhere else, I think.
Absolutely. And this is a topic that came up this morning and we didn't really have a chance to discuss properly. So Tina said, from your perspective, what is the best way, do you think, of handing on your expertise and for other people to learn? So how do you do that in practice? Stefan, first of all, do you have apprentices, or what sort of training program do you have locally?
The biggest problem in Belgium, there is a big problem that we have. It's one country for you with one king, but I speak French and Dutch as native language, but you feel more and more Flemish people don't speak any more French, and Dutch French spoken people, they always had problems to speak French. And there is a big leak in communication about green heritage. When they do restorations, it all goes about restorations of the material buildings, like an orangery, and then they use it as a restaurant. But we have a huge heritage, and I collect the last 10 years, I received huge archives from old horticulturists around Ghent. It was a very important city, but it's all, and 10 times more is already went all to the bin. So I have the apprenticeship I received as a small boy from the neighbor, and there was before a large way of education, because they used Christian or Catholic religion used the apprenticeship of gardening and pruning fruit trees. It was a whole vision of Christianization on low educated people who only went till 10 and 12 years to school, and it was till the 50s. So people who hardly could read, they learned them reading through gardening, learned them counting, and it was really indoctrinated with a Catholic Christian vision. But they really learned pruning, and the concept of pruning a fruit tree is like a good religion is like a good pruned fruit tree. It produces a lot of fruit. That was the idea behind. And I received that way of pruning from that old neighbor, and through my grandmother. They had a property that was from someone above, gesturing how do you maintain it, such something. but I really got it in private by working in gardens in France as well, to my more theoretical education as my formation. But for the moment, I feel it as a big lag. There is no communication and no knowledge anymore. It all goes about in Germany. There is an intention to fuse practical knowledge with theoretical knowledge. Here we are still, I call it the French vision. Someone with a university degree don't looks at someone with a spade in his hand. It's only a practical man, and that's the French or the Mediterranean vision. And we're still following that, and we grow away from each other, and it's a pity. So I try to fuse, and I still try to fuse it. But here in Belgium, I feel a little bit. How do you call it? Calling in the desert alone, or
Isolated.
isolated in the, but there's a leak of knowledge. There is still old people. They still have a lot of old nurserymen, but all nursery trade went to Holland. They all closed down. There is hardly some nurseries in horticulture plants, glass grown plants, and it's all commercialized. Like before, they had 20, 30, sometimes 200 varieties of plants they grow in their nursery. Glass houses nursery. Now it's only one, maximum two plants they grow. It's all industrialized, but they kept it like this till the 70s in Belgium. It's very rare. They're very conservative, but in one moment they had to switch over, and then they closed down. They sold their so that's, well, it's changed quite a lot, and there is we have problems as well over here. It's not all beauty and.
No, I understand. So, Joakim and Stefan, do you see any comparisons with Sweden in the way that you can hand on your knowledge and experience?
Well, I transmitted to Sebastien, the gardener in Frier. He is the head gardener, but as I'm working as an independent for the foundation, the Koning Boudewijn Foundation. It may be that they say tomorrow we don't pay you anymore, so there will be nobody. So it's better to have at least two people who have a knowledge of sometimes. So I transmitted to the head gardener, but for the rest, there are only two collections anymore left for citrus trees in Belgium. There's the Royal Palace in Laken. They have a huge tropical greenhouses which you can visit early May, and a lot of people visit them in late April. And they transmitted. They have a whole group of gardeners, but for me, I hardly transmitted it. There is no questioning to pay me for. I can always free transmit my information. I know, but there is no interest for the moment over here to transmit such information. Not in Flanders.
And Joakim, in Sweden, what would you say?
Well, we started, we had this Orangery course here at Gunnebo, trying to bring in expertise from abroad, mainly from Germany. So we had a course for gardeners in Sweden and some years ago. So we have tried to address this, and I think orangeries and this topic is not so common, so I think we have to have an international collaboration or a network, and I think perhaps the Arbeitskreis Orangerie in Deutschland is a good network for this topic, but it's there are language barriers since it's mainly in German. So if you don't speak German, it's not so easy to take part of what's going on there. But I think so international collaboration and also spending time learning from each other is the way to go, I think. So be like an apprentice for in another garden where they have an old plant collection and a living tradition, knowledge tradition.
Well, so that's what we're trying to do today and what we're hoping to do next summer.